I watched The Force Awakens again, so you don't have to. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure to like, comment, subscribe for more movie rewatches. So, if you guys don't know, Episode 7 of Star Wars, The Force Awakens, first came out on December 18th, 2015. I was like 10 years old at the time, and it was the first ever Star Wars movie I got to see in theaters, and my father took me. It was snowing. It was great. Good experience. Let's go 10 years later to today, May 25th, 2026. I decided to rewatch the movie and write down some notes about it. If you guys can see here, I have an entire notebook full of notes, and we're gonna start from the first page. So, to be honest, with the beginning of the movie, it starts off with like Poe Dameron on Jakku talking to that one old guy. I forgot. Oh, Lord Santega, I think that was his name. And he's trying to find the map to find Luke Skywalker. Already a decent start off to the movie. It's not the most amazing plot in the world so far, but it's not a bad setup. Finding Luke Skywalker, come on. And then, you know, Kylo Ren and the First Order come on, blah, 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 blah. They're trying to find a map. Kylo Ren, you know, is trying to get to the map. He finds Lord Santeka. Poe tries to escape, and he's like, oh, nah, come here, bitch. And he does that really cool scene of freezing a blaster bolt, which is honestly really cool. I've heard some people complain about that scene, but I actually really like it. I think it's cool. I'm pretty sure we've seen it done in the animated shows before. Not during this time when it first came out, but as of now, I'm sure we've seen it on a couple of like animated medias and stuff like that. So it's a cool scene to look at, like 10 years later, in my opinion. And so, you know, we get that kind of like introduction of Finn, and we see Rey doing her scavenging stuff. Now, I'm gonna be so honest. The first half of the movie is fine. I don't really have too many problems with it. I didn't care that much for Rey scavenging. I didn't find it that interesting. It definitely shows us like where she comes from to establish that she's a nobody in this sense. But I didn't really care for it that much. Finn and Poe try to escape. Finn crash lands onto Jakku, and he's trying to look for Poe, but Poe's like gone, and so he thinks that Poe's dead. And so he takes his jacket, he goes off to like the village, encounters Rey, who previously before that had ran into BB-8 and saved him and kept him. We get that really nice scene of him beeping "I love you," which I thought was a good scene then. I think it's a good scene now. Eventually they cross paths as she's trying to like sell her fucking scavengers or whatever. It's fine. They fight off some stormtroopers and stuff like that. And then Rey attacks Finn because BB-8's like, yo, he's got my guy's jacket. He's got Poe's jacket. And then Finn lies to her and is like, oh, I'm with the Resistance, and I'm here to get to the droid and stuff like that and return to the base. He's lying. We obviously know that. But at this point, Finn is defected, and they're all together. They try to get onto a ship to escape. It gets blown up, and then they find the Millennium Falcon. For some reason, they didn't recognize it at first, which is okay, I guess. They get intercepted on the Millennium Falcon by Han Solo. He gets on the ship after Finn and Rey start fixing it or whatever. And eventually then all of them they kind of have like a group meeting. You know, they're like, oh my god, you're Han Solo. You ran the 12 parsecs or whatever. And, you know, then they get intercepted by that like space gang. I forgot what they were called. It doesn't matter. They're not a point anyway. And then they have problems with Han Solo because like, yo, you owe us mad money, gang. So then they start throwing blaster bolts and shit like that. They got the rain cores loose. They get eaten up and stuff like that. And then Han has officially retaken the ship. So, you know, they're with the gang and stuff like that. They get to the Resistance base. And pretty much, this is where like my notes start to begin. I actually just finished the movie. I kind of split the watching in half because I got bored of the first half. So the second half, boom. We're on Takodana. Rey finds Anakin's lightsaber. It calls out to her. We get that really nice flashback scene of like the Jedi voices and stuff like that. I remember back in the day, people used to think that Rey could have been Obi-Wan's granddaughter because of the voice calling out to her when she picks up the lightsaber. It's a really good scene. I like it. She runs out of her responsibility after Maz Kanata is like, oh, this was Luke's lightsaber and his father's before him, and now it calls to you. Really good scene. I actually like that scene a lot. Because, you know, they're on Takodana. For what reason, I kind of forgot. So then eventually the First Order is like, yo, we gotta go to Takodana. The guys we're looking for, they're on there. So boom, they get to Takodana and they start attacking and stuff like that. And this is really where my notes start to begin. Han and Chewie are fighting off some stormtroopers, and so Han is like, hey, let me try your blaster out real quick. So he takes Chewie's bowcaster. He's able to blast the stormtrooper all the way to fucking Narnia, and he's like, whoa, I really like this thing. Which I had a problem with the scene because like for all the years that Chewie and Han have been together, it's like, I'm sure you've used it before. It's hard for me to believe that this is your first time ever using Chewie's bowcaster. But alas. Then we get that scene that I love to this day where we have the Stormtrooper with the Riot Baton base. I actually have a replica of it above. I'm not going to reach for it. Mad work. But he's like, traitor! And he starts spinning this shit, and then him and Finn start fighting after he activates Anakin's lightsaber. Good scene. I actually really liked it. I do think that this is the start of Finn becoming underutilized, because we have the perfect setup for him to be a Jedi. But, you know, alas, fuck it. Fuck Finn, right? So far at this point, it's really just A New Hope if it wasn't as good. And so we see the Resistance finally swoop in to save everybody. We see Poe Dameron piloting his X-Wing. He's blowing up TIE fighters left and right, and Finn is watching, and he's like, yo, that's one hell of a pilot. And I actually really like this scene. I love that scene back when I first see the movie, and I still like it. It's a good scene in my opinion. So then we see more of Kylo Ren. So we saw Kylo Ren and Jakku with the blaster scene. I think so far Kylo Ren has been the strongest part of this movie by far. Adam Driver does a good job at making him mysterious and intimidating at the same time. Like I said, I genuinely think he was the best part of this movie. And probably the sequel trilogy itself. But I'll get into that later. On Takudana, he does great at pursuing Rey. It's a great kind of like horror-esque kind of like scene. I love it. I just think he's the best part so far. I really do. So then we see that Han Solo sees Ben again, which is his name. Kylo Ren's real name is Ben Solo, after he kidnaps Rey. I think it was a nice scene. It was definitely a nice scene. Harrison Ford's facial expressions did a great job. It's just a good scene. And then we see Han reunite with Leia Organa. And I'm not gonna lie to you, when I seen this scene again, I'm not gonna lie, I started to tear up. Any scene that has had Carrie Fisher in it throughout this movie has made me tear up. It wouldn't have done that 10 years ago. But unfortunately, Carrie Fisher has passed away since then. May God rest her soul. She will forever be our princess. And so every scene that I've seen her in thus far, and every scene I've seen her in past this point, including that scene, it just made me tear up. I'm going to be so honest. I couldn't handle it. I was just like, oh my God. They're good scenes. They're great scenes, and it's just amplified by the fact that she's no longer with us. The problem that I start to have is Han's regression as a character. When we left Han Solo in episode 6, he had already turned his life around. He had left being a playboy and only caring about himself and being, you know, Han Solo in the past. And he got to this new point where, you know, he put all that down. He's a war hero. He fell in love with Leia. They had a kid. They settled down. And we just seen his character arc unfold and complete itself in episode 6, at the end of episode 6. And so now he's just regressed as a character, which is just like, why are we undoing everything that they had worked towards? There are so many different ways they could have taken that route of him dealing with the grief of losing his son to the dark side. They didn't have to do it that way. I just think it was a bad move. If they were going to go that route, it should have been done much better with more respect to the character and actors. Next, we see Chewie and Leia reunite. Again, another scene that almost made me cry. Seeing Chewie hug Leia was just absolutely amazing to see 10 years later. We see Finn and Poe reunite as well. Great scene. Oscar Isaac is probably another one of those excellent parts of the movie. Probably him and Kylo Ren just absolutely blown it out of the park. I love any scene that Poe Dameron is in. He does a great job, and I really like his character. After that, after they reunite, you know, Finn is like, oh my God, I thought you were dead, and Poe is like, oh my God, I thought you were dead, and then Finn is like, yo, I need your help, gang. So then they go talk to Leia, and Leia is congratulating Finn and applauding him for his heel turn against the First Order. Again, great scene. Carrie Fisher, wow, really sets up Finn kind of being a stormtrooper to Jedi story, but again, fuck Finn, right? Because Kathleen Kennedy just, I don't know, she just, oh my God, I hate Kathleen Kennedy. Anyway, boom. So Leia's comments on his heel turn against the First Order, great, I love it. Then we see R2 underneath like a tarp or whatever, because, you know, after Luke's disappearance, it kind of like messed up R2 for a little bit. So he's kind of there, and so they find him. Not too much happens in that scene, but it's nice to see R2 again. We never get to see Leia, Han, and Luke on screen. The most that we get is Han and Leia. That's about it. I don't understand how in the same movie we see all three of our legacy characters and one of them is killed off after ruining his character. I still stand by this 10 years, 11 years later that they ruined Han Solo's character, and they did so with Luke in the very next movie. I have to rewatch The Last Jedi. I'm not excited to do that, but, you know, I will for the review, right? I love the scene where they're talking about getting Ben back, and so Han is like, if Luke couldn't get to him, why do you think I can get to him? And Leia's like, hey, Luke is a Jedi. You are his father. I love that scene. Again, almost more tears. I love Carrie Fisher. Yeah. So then we cut to Kylo Ren talking to Rey and trying to interrogate her. So she's in this like kind of like chamber thing, and she's locked down, and he's gonna use the Force to try to interrogate her mind. I forgot exactly what that move is called. It might just be like Force interrogation. I don't know. But it's a great scene. And right after that, we see him take his helmet off, and we see Adam Driver as Ben Solo, and we see him put his helmet on like this pedestal that has sand in it. For some reason, I don't know why they did that. Why are we putting the helmet in sand? Don't get me wrong, visually it looked cool, and like the dust kind of coming from that podium was cool. But it's like, why would I put my helmet? That's like if I went to the beach and I put my hat in the sand and then put it back on my head. What, like, why would I do that? You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. But okay. So then we see Kylo Ren trying to interrogate Rey, and so he's using the Force, and he's like, I'll take, you know, I can take what I want, which is kind of a crazy line, but you know, fuck it. So he's using the Force. He's trying to interrogate Rey, and she's resisting. She's like, and so she's resisting him trying to interrogate her with the Force. And I thought this was a cool scene. I don't know how she was able to do it, but you know, obviously we find out that they were Force dyad, and she's Palpatine's fucking granddaughter or some shit. And so it makes sense, but it only really makes sense. What? The movie came out 4 years after. So it only really made sense 4 years after because she has that lineage power boost. But at the time of the movie, it doesn't make any fucking sense how she was able to resist Kylo Ren. I'm not saying he's like the strongest being in the world, but he has significantly more training than she has in the Force, and so she should not have been able to resist. Then we see Snoke, because Kylo Ren is like, Supreme Leader, the girl was able to resist my Force interrogation, and Hux is like, well, Kylo Ren thought that if we take BB-8 and leave him and take the girl instead, we'd find Luke Skywalker. But guess what, Supreme Leader, he was wrong. And so Kylo Ren kind of gets embarrassed here. Snoke is okay. I never really cared about Snoke, even like 11 years ago. I still don't care about him now, and I definitely don't care about him now after everything that we find out in Rise of Skywalker. He was always just okay to me. Never like, he was never as intimidating as Vader or Palpatine or even any of the Sith we've seen prior, like Maul, Dooku, Asajj. He was never as intimidating in my opinion. He was just a really big hologram with a loud voice, and that was about it. So then eventually, while Rey is left alone, we see her alone in the interrogation room with a stormtrooper behind her, and she's trying to use a Jedi mind trick. So she's like, you will unlock me and leave the door open. She does it a couple times because the first time it doesn't work, and the stormtrooper's kind of like, what the fuck did you say to me? But eventually it works, and it's okay. It's an okay scene. Even she's kind of like, whoa, how did I do that? But it's just a bunch of okay. Again, with her lineage, it makes sense on how she was able to do it. It does kind of set up her being a Jedi, but it was a bunch of alright. It was okay. So then Kylo Ren goes back to the interrogation room to get Rey because Snoke is like, yo, bring me the girl, I got this. So then he goes into the interrogation room, and he's kind of like, whoa, where the fuck did she go? And then he turns on his lightsaber. He starts doing his you know, he starts raging and shit like that. And so then eventually we see the stormtroopers turn around the corner, and they see that all of the embers and stuff are coming from the room, and they're kind of like, oh damn, he's in his tantrum again. So they turn around and they leave. I thought that was a funny scene. It's a great scene. I actually really like that scene. No complaints. I like that scene. It's a funny scene. So then we get to Starkiller Base. Eventually the whole plan is that, well, we kind of ripped from episode 6 of going to Endor to disable the Death Star shields, and so the plan of the Resistance is to take out the oscillator thing that is kind of absorbing the energy from the sun. So they go to Starkiller Base and stuff like that. For some reason, Finn lies about knowing how to take out the fucking Starkiller Base, because Han Solo's like, wait, what the fuck you mean you don't know? And he's like, oh, I just made it up. I'm just here to save Rey. And I'm like, come on, bro. Like, I get it. You want to save her. But we organized this entire mission to blow up this fucking planet, and you're telling us now when we're on the planet you lied? Just like, come on, bro. Like, lock in, bro. I did also forget to mention that we see Han and Leia's last scene where, you know, they start hugging and stuff like that. And again, another tear almost came out of my eye. I just, any scene with Carrie is just, again, emotionally just hit me right here. You know what I mean? So, you know, the gang gets on Starkiller Base. They're looking for Rey, and we see that Finn's idea is to kidnap Captain Phasma, which I actually like Captain Phasma. She's cool. She's not like the greatest character in the world, but she's fine. I like her. I like her armor. It's cool. And, you know, we get that scene of him being like, I'm the captain now. I'm the captain now, Phasma. And Han's kind of like, yo, tone it down, gang. And I like that scene. It's funny. It's nice to see, you know, Finn kind of in a position of power. at this point in the movie, where at first he was her, subordinate, and now he's kind of telling her what to do. So pretty cool scene. I like. So then the plan is, when they eventually see Rey and they kind of regroup and stuff like that. So now the plan is to just put thermal detonators throughout like the fucking base where the sun power is and stuff like that. And we get this very infamous scene of Han Solo and Ben Solo reuniting. Han Solo's walking the bridge. Kylo Ren is meeting him, and they have the interaction. He screams, "Ben!" And I actually really like that scene. I always like that scene. I thought it was fine. We get that scene where Kylo Ren is like, "I know what I have to do, but I don't think I have the strength to do it. Can you help me?" And and Han is like, "Yeah, anything. I got you, gang. You're my son." And so we see Kylo Ren hold out his lightsaber. Han grabs it, and then there's a lot of tension in the scene. I think they did a great job at elevating the tension. And then eventually, Kylo Ren turns on the saber and kills Han Solo. So a character that we ruined in the movie and killed off in the same movie. Great. Chewie shoots Kylo Ren in the leg, which causes, pain throughout the duel later. Chewie goes on a rampage, killing stormtroopers and stuff. I love that scene. He's angry. He has the right to be. They blow up the fucking bombs. Finn and Rey escape. And they're kind of in the snowy forest of Starkiller Base. I love Starkiller Base. It's a beautiful scenery. It is kind of like a ripoff of Hoth in a way, but fuck it, I guess. And then we got the infamous duel between Finn, Rey, and Kylo Ren. So we see that Kylo Ren is constantly hitting his wound and the side to try to... I don't know what the purpose was exactly. I have to look back at it, but I think it was just like subdue the pain or some shit. We get that beautiful scene of Adam Driver yelling "Traitor!" to Finn, and I think it's a great scene. I love that scene. I did 11 years ago. I still do now. It's a great scene. He knocks out Rey with the Force, and Finn picks up Anakin's lightsaber, and he uses it. This is, again, another contributing factor to what we thought was Finn's storyline of him being Stormtrooper the Jedi. But again, fuck Finn. Am I right, guys? Like, come on. What are we doing? We want to give a Stormtrooper a character arc? Ugh, God forbid, right? So then we talk about the choreography, which has been another, just with the choreography 11 years ago, with the choreography in the shows as of recently. Star Wars lightsaber duels in live action have just been so messy, in my opinion. I want to do a video of like looking at the Disney Plus show fight scenes, because some of them are not that great, and some of them I thought were good. And then I rewatched them. I'm just like, oh, this is not good. But the fight scene is okay. Kylo Ren's first few swings kind of look iffy, and I think they were fine. But you can also kind of see the struggle of using a crossguard saber, because with a crossguard, you have the blades illuminating horizontally. And so you can kind of see that with his hand position, he's trying not to let it touch his hand. But they're also really wild swings that kind of make me question whether or not Kylo Ren was trained with a lightsaber. It just doesn't look that way. There should have been a significant gap in how the choreo looked coming from Adam Driver and Rey and Finn. Rey and Finn should have had an untrained heavy look, while Kylo Ren should not have looked as untrained. Kylo Ren does this really cool flurry combo with his lightsaber that looked pretty cool, and then he ultimately ends up slicing Finn in the back, kind of disabling him, and then he goes out to reach for the saber with the Force, and the lightsaber goes past him to Rey. Now, my problem with this scene is there is no way that Rey is stronger in the Force at this point in time than Kylo Ren, who just killed his father, an obstacle that he needs to get over to fully ascend to the dark side. So my thing is, did he get no power boost from that in the dark side? Because if so, then it just made his death pointless. Which maybe that was the point of him dying, just to show how pointless Han Solo apparently is to Kathleen Kennedy. They're kind of just swinging the lightsabers around like a baseball bat, him and Rey. Nothing too impressive on the choreography for sure. There is no reason why Rey should have been winning at all. The only upside advantage that she had was Kylo Ren being 1, injured, and 2, that's really it, actually. The only upside she had is him being injured. So, I don't know. Eventually we get this scene of them interlocking the lightsabers on the edge of like the cliff, because the planet is blowing up at this point. It's being destroyed. And so she's kind of like holding a lightsaber, and he's like, "You need a teacher in the ways of the Force." And she's just kind of like, "The Force?" And so they're locking the lightsabers. She has her eyes closed just like this. And my thing is, like, she stood there for like a decent amount of time with her eyes closed. I don't know why Kylo Ren didn't just like retract his lightsaber and just disable her by like stabbing her in the arm or the leg or something. I don't know. It's just like, bro, you could have just disabled her right there and kidnapped her or some shit. Fuck it, right? Again, with the choreography, it looks like Adam Driver is trying not to let the cross guard hit his hand, which again, kind of just like, eh. But then we see that Rey kind of locks in a little bit and slices Ben Solo in the eye, giving him a really nasty scar, which I think they diluted the scar in episode 8, because looking at it 11 years later, like with my set of eyes as an adult, that was a nasty scar. So I think it should have looked worse in episode 8, but maybe I'm wrong. Then we see, you know, everybody leave. They go on the Millennium Falcon. The plane's getting blown up and shit. You know, they take care of business. And so they get back to the Resistance base. And we see Leia and Rey hugging because she felt Han die in the Force, I believe. Again, really sad scene. Another tear almost came out of my eye. There's no complaints that I have on any scene that Carrie Fisher is in. Eventually, we see R2 become reactivated. And he has the map to Luke Skywalker. So my question is this. Luke has been gone for how many years now? And we had R2 in storage this entire time. Did nobody try to like turn on R2 and figure out where the fuck Luke was at? I mean, I guess because BB-8 had the last piece. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, bro. I guess. I mean, I guess he wouldn't have the full map because BB-8 had the rest, but man, a couple times in the movie they say the map to Luke Skywalker, and at this point when they have the map fully assembled, I said to myself aloud, the map to Luke Skywalker, and I'm not gonna lie, that phrase has a lot of aura. Anything that mentions Luke Skywalker has a lot of aura, except when it comes out of Kathleen Kennedy's mouth. We see that they take Finn to the medical bay, and so he's kind of just laying there, and Rey's like, thank you for everything, you know, I hope you get better and stuff like that. So she kind of kisses him on the forehead, which I thought was a good way to kind of soft launch them as a potential couple. You know, eventually we know what happens in Rise of Skywalker, but at the same time, it's like, it would have been nice to see them together. But, you know, fuck Finn, I guess. Like I said, we get to Act 2, which is where Luke Skywalker was hiding out. We see that Rey's kind of climbing up to the temple walls and stuff like that. Not the temple walls, like the hill walls. And we see that Luke Skywalker's kind of there, turned around, looking over the edge, looking like he wants to jump off. And he has a lot of aura, I'm not going to lie to you, until we find out what happens in the next movie. God, I hate Rian Johnson. So then we see Rey kind of hand off the Anakin saber to Luke, and he's just staring at it, kind of looking like he wants to cry. Those are pretty much all of the notes I wrote down while watching the movie. Now I just have some overall thoughts. The plot was okay. It was like A New Hope and Return of the Jedi kind of mixed together, but if it was like really bad. We don't get to see Han, Luke, and Leia all together on the screen. And then they kill off Han Solo in the same movie. Like, they robbed us of the original trilogy trio scene. Like, why didn't we get that? But okay, why didn't Leia go on the Millennium Falcon to see Luke Skywalker? If there was anyone that could have convinced him to come back, it would have been his twin sister. I think the start was fine. Again, it was alright. To me, it was a good start. Now, the actual movie itself, I don't think it was that bad. Even 11 years later, I think it could have been a great start to the rest of the trilogy, but it was wasted potential at the end of the day. I think they should have taken more risk with the movie. I think they played it too safe trying to recreate episode 4 and 6. Don't get me wrong, we saw what happened when Rian Johnson took risk, but that's an example of like, if I wanted to cook eggs, and I always cook my eggs scrambled, and I wanted to change it up by, instead of scrambling my eggs in a pan, I took a piece of rock, lit that rock on fire, and then tried to scramble an egg on top of the rock. That's the example of the risk that Rian Johnson took. It didn't make any fucking sense, and I think the movie should have taken a risk in a more like EU, in a more EU toward lane. And so I think this is what the story should have been. Now, I'm sure you've seen these kind of videos all the time. What should episode 7 have looked like? What the sequel trilogy should have did better? How the story should have went? And I don't mean to recreate those videos. This is just something I thought of that kind of aligns with how the movie was kind of going and with the original storyline. So I think the original story should have been everyone trying to find Luke Skywalker as he got stuck on this planet. Now, that planet could have been Acto. It could have been Exegol. It could have been some random fuck-ass planet that Kathleen Kennedy came up with. But it should have been everyone trying to find Luke, not because he vanished, but because he was trying to do something. It should have been the Resistance and Rey and Finn trying to find Luke Skywalker because he was on a mission to destroy the remnants of the Sith and the Empire and got lost. And from the First Order's perspective, them trying to get to Luke Skywalker, 1, to destroy him, and 2, to recover any remnants of the Sith and the Empire. I think that would have been a more convincing storyline that kind of aligns with how they were going already, instead of it just being Kylo Ren wants to find Luke Skywalker because he's mad and he had a temper tantrum and hates his uncle. We should have seen Luke somewhat training on the planet, whether it be like sprinkled throughout the scenes or something. We should have seen more of Luke, whether it be him training, him getting lost, or something. We just should have seen more of Luke Skywalker as a Jedi before he dies in episode 8. So yeah, those are pretty much my overall thoughts. If I had to give the movie a rating out of 10 Millennium Falcons, I'm gonna give it a solid 7 out of 10 Millennium Falcons. It's not the best movie in the world, but it's not horrible. Again, I think it's a decent start to a new trilogy with just wasted potential, and we see what happens in the next 2 movies. But if you guys enjoyed me rewatching The Force Awakens again 11 years later, stay tuned because I'm gonna rewatch episode 8 and subject myself to an absolute misery of a movie. Peace.